Good evening, everyone. We'll get started in about 5 minutes. Thank you very much. It's 6 o'clock, so we'll get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's public hearing. My name is John Urino. I'm the zoning examiner for the city of Tucson. I conduct rezoning hearings on behalf of the mayor and council and make findings of fact, which I put into a report along with my recommendation and send to the mayor and council for their consideration and for their final decision. We have 3 cases on the docket tonight. The first is a special exception case. For special exception cases, I will issue my ruling on the request for a special exception within 5 business days. The 2 other cases are rezoning cases, and in each of those cases, I will make a preliminary report within 5 business days, and then my final report 5 business days thereafter. So without further ado, the first case is case SE 2109, Tucson Water, South Houghton. Mr. Beal, are you going to make a presentation on this case?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a request by Lexi Willett of the Planning Center on behalf of the property owner, City of Tucson Water Department, to equip a newly drilled well as a special exception land use in the RX1 zone. The special exception site is located at 12898 South Houghton Road, approximately 1 mile west of South South Houghton Road and 1 mile north of East Pima Mine Ranch Road. The special exception is requested for a 0.23 acre property located south of the Pima County Fairgrounds. As part of Tucson Water's long-term water management strategy, this well will replace an existing older on-site well. Distribution system uses in the RX1 zone are subject to the Unified Development Code and require approval through a zoning examiner special exception process. The proposal is in compliance with the performance criteria for a utility distribution use. The request is consistent with the policy direction and plan Tucson and the Rincon Southeast Subregional Plan, which support development design to be compatible with and sensitive to surrounding land uses. A plan amendment is not required, and subject to compliance with the attached preliminary conditions, approval of the requested special exception is appropriate. As of today's date, there have been 0 protests and 0 approvals.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Ms. Willett, would you like to be heard?
Sure, Mr. Urino, thank you for having us this evening. For the record, Lexi Willett with the Planning Center located at 2 East Congress in downtown Tucson. On behalf of Tucson Water, we are requesting a special exception. You are familiar with these cases. It's an existing well site and a new well was drilled in 2020. And so the special exception process is to allow them to equip it with the necessary technology to deliver water. So I've got Dorothy Dolan, the project manager, on the phone with me this evening, and would be happy to answer any questions if you have any, Mr. Urino.
Thank you, Ms. Willett. I don't have any questions. I reviewed the application and all the supporting materials, and thank you very much. Would anyone in the audience like to be heard on this case? Hearing no one, I'm closing the hearing on special exception case SE 2109. Thank you, Ms. Willett. Our next case is case C92110, CAP Storage Development, Valencia and Midvale. Mr. Beal, do you have a presentation on this case as well?
Yes. This is a request by Rory Junman and Robin Large of Lazarus Sylvan on behalf of the developer applicant CAP Storage Development, LLC, to rezone approximately 3.36 acres from C1 to C2 zoning. The rezoning site is comprised of vacant land extending between South Midvale Park Road on the west and South Commerce Court on the east, approximately 400 feet north of Valencia Road. The preliminary development plan proposes a 2-story climate-controlled self-storage development with a single building totaling 104,400 square feet of floor area and 52,000 approximately square feet on each of the 2 floors, with a pass-through security-controlled vehicle access lane within the center of the building for loading and unloading, a 500 square foot management office, and required parking, screening, and landscaping. While the C2 zone allows a maximum height of 40 feet, the PDP shows the storage building height is proposed to be 30 feet. The existing C1 zoning allows a maximum height of only 16 feet for personal storage uses. Therefore, in order to accommodate the proposed 30-foot height of the structure, the applicant is requesting a rezoning to C2. The proposed rezoning is consistent with and supported by the policy direction provided in Plan Tucson and Santa Cruz Area Plan, subject to compliance with the attached preliminary conditions. Approval of the requested rezoning is appropriate. As of today's date, there have been 0 approvals and 0 protests.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Mr. Junman, would you like to be heard?
Yes, Mr. Urino, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Beal, for the presentation, all your help with this case. For the record, Rory Junman with Lazarus and Sylvan, 5983 East Grant Road. We represent CAP Storage Development, LLC. They're out of Greenville, South Carolina. We're presenting the rezoning case for the, as Mr. Beal said, the vacant land between Midvale Park and Commerce Court, north of Valencia. I want to introduce some of our team members here tonight. From CAP, is Brody Glenn, and Doug Wynn, our broker, is on the line. He's Troy Keeney, and then also Robin Large and Carrie Sylvan are from Lazarus and Sylvan. Mr. Zoning Examiner, would it be all right if I presented some slides here to walk through the presentation?
Please do. Thank you.
All right. Can you see the slides?
Yes, thank you.
All right, great. It's all downhill from here once I get past the tech. All right, so for the presentation this evening, I want to orient you to the site. As I said, it's north of Valencia between Commerce and Midvale Park. It's a vacant site, as Mr. Beal had said, and it's really kind of an odd-shaped parcel. It's almost a remnant based on the development that's occurred around it. It is in both the Midvale Park Neighborhood Association, and interestingly enough, it's part of the Midvale Park Homeowners Association, which has some commercial businesses and most of the residential in Midvale Park as well. And we've had outreach with both of those groups, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. The site is C1, and it's surrounded by C1 zoning for the most part. The uses along Valencia, between us and Valencia, are some restaurants and retail. To the west is a little bit more intense C2 zoning with a Walmart. To the east and north, some O3 zoning. There's a small area of single-family residential to our northeast, but the rest of the uses on the east are offices and some vacant land. As Mr. Beal had mentioned, and in our application in the staff report, we conform with both Plan Tucson and the Santa Cruz area plans. The use that we're proposing really is a low intensity commercial use, and it really complements and kind of fits well within the current uses, including the residential. I mentioned that the parcel is oddly shaped. There's not a lot of uses that could probably really fit in here because there's not great street frontage. The storage use that we're proposing really is a use that can do well here, and again, doesn't have much impact on the surrounding neighborhoods. So want to talk a little bit about the reason why we're rezoning. It was mentioned before that C1 has, it allows personal storage, but it has some limitations, a 16-foot height limitation that really probably made sense back when this code section was drafted, when many storages and personal storages were one story, kind of long, narrow, not climate controlled, all access from the outside, kind of like garages stacked side by side. But storage has really evolved, especially in the last few years. It's become a use that really fits in better with the surrounding neighborhoods. It mimics the look of an office or a retail, but to fit in, it requires additional height, and that's why we're asking for the C2 zoning today to get a little bit additional height. Now, if we didn't have the 16-foot limitation, we likely could develop under C1, but that 16-foot limitation really limits us. And so that's why we're asking for the C2 zoning. The project will be 2 stories. We'll cap it at 30 feet, which if it were any other use would be permitted in C1. The architecture will really look like a modern retail type use. And all the access is going to be controlled within the interior of the building. We'll have 2 access points that we'll show in a minute that are security controlled and allow the users to do all their loading and unloading from the interior of the building. From there, they'll access their specific storage units. So it really does take away any of those impacts, noise, light, from the surrounding neighbors, because all of that activity is happening within the building. There's no exterior gates or fences. The security is all controlled at the building level. So the use really does look like an office use or retail use from the street. There's not an imposing fence at the property line. It's really more of an open environment. Traffic is low. As our traffic statement says, we've got the estimates are about 158 trips per day, so it's a very low traffic use. And really, all these put together show that this use has minimal impact on the surrounding neighbors and really is a good use for this site. So now I'd like to turn it over to Brody Glenn from CAP to talk a little bit about their development across the country. They do these storage projects across the country, walk through a couple of examples, and then talk more specifically about this project, the site plan, and show some elevations as well. So
thank you, Mr. Jungman. Mr. Glenn, if you'd like to speak, start with your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. So this is Brody Glenn with Centennial American Properties. My address is 935 South Main Street, Greenville, South Carolina, 29601. Rory, thanks for the great introduction. Thanks, everybody, for your time. I was chairman of our hometown's planning commission for a long time and understand the frustration that these meetings can have, and just appreciate your time and thanks for considering this. Our background at Centennial is retail development. We were one of Walgreens' largest developers in the country, and then one of Trader Joe's as well. And we did those stores from coast to coast. Within the last 3 or 4 years, we've gotten into self-storage. Really what we're doing is bringing retail discipline to self-storage and creating a use that you see in lots of industrial type zones, and bringing a modern spin to it, creating something that's more convenient for the neighborhoods and really an amenity to the density that a lot of cities are trying to have. We're doing these projects in secondary and tertiary markets throughout the country. And our goal is to go into a market similar to Tucson, and do in Tucson, we might do as many as 5, 6, 7 stores throughout the whole Tucson, Pima County area. Our stores, I mentioned, it looks and feels a lot like retail. One of our goals was to be in the commercial districts. We knew to do that, we needed to get the gates off the building, but we also wanted our customers to be able to load and unload secure and out of the weather as possible. We created a vehicular pull-through, which you can see on the left-hand side of this building. So you can actually, the customer will be able to pull up and either with a punch code or their phone, there'll be garage doors on each side, and open the doors and pull their car directly into the building and be able to load and unload into the elevator and the hallways, depending on what floor they're on. This is a building we built in Wichita, Kansas. This store, which is similar to most stores that we're doing, is 3 stories. We're staying 2 stories there on Valencia just because of we want to stay within the C1 zoning. So really what we're trying to do is adapt to the C1 zoning, but we're going to C2 so that we can get the height above the personal storage height limitations. Rory, if you want to flip to the next slide. This is another store that we did, very similar prototype. This is also a 3-story store. You can see the pull-through there. We'll have similar pull-throughs that'll be glass doors on each side so people can see easily where they're going and how they get there. This is a store, as you can see, this is a store that was in a mill town in Georgia that we adapted to look like the mill. You can actually see the old mill stack in the rear. I apologize, it's my dog barking. This is the site plan, pretty typical site plan for us other than store. So it's about a 52,000 square foot floor plate, 2 stories in height. The pull through will go from north to south. We chose that just because just lights. We figured lights coming through the building towards the north were better than going the other way, although there's no residential adjacent to us. Our access we're showing off of Commerce. We've talked about access off of Midvale. We've chosen not to do that just because we felt like our traffic consultants, the U-turn at Midvale and Valencia was something that we didn't want people to do. And our traffic counts, we create about 17 or 18 peak hour trips. So it's not a big traffic generator by any means. Or next slide. This is an elevation specific to the Valencia site. As you can see, we're using neutral tones and tones that are similar to other very good-looking buildings in Tucson. This shows the heights that we'll use, also shows the glass doors and the 52,000 square foot floor plan. Rory, I'll flip it back to you.
All right, that sounds great. Thanks, Brody. So I just want to finish up with kind of walking through our neighborhood outreach. We had our neighborhood meeting on April 15th, had about 6 attendees, had some good questions, but I think for the most part, we got a fairly positive reaction to this. I think we had several people mentioned that this vacant parcel has kind of been a problem for a while, from weeds to trash to some vagrancy. So I think most of the neighbors around us are looking forward to something being there. And like we've said, I think this is a good use to be here because it's compatible with the neighborhood. We also presented at the Midvale Park Homeowners Association meeting on May 10th. A lot of the questions we got there were security focused. I think some of those neighbors had some concerns about the security aspects. Brody did a really good job of explaining how they put a premium on security through cameras and lighting and really just the configuration of the building where it just has 2 primary entrances. Those things all really result in a secure site. I think by the end of that meeting, they were pretty satisfied with the answers and that this is going to be a secure location. We've had discussions with the Midvale Park Neighborhood Association president. He was one that was very supportive of something being developed here because of those issues we talked about earlier. And then we've also talked with Ward 1 and had some other calls with various neighbors. So I think so far we've had a pretty good reception, very positive reception. So with that, that is our presentation. We have reviewed the conditions from the staff report, and those are all acceptable. And we respectfully request that you recommend approval for this, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Juman. Thank you, Mr. Glenn. I don't have any questions at the present time. Would anyone in the audience like to be heard on this case? Hearing no one. Mr. Glenn, thank you for participating from, I take it, from your home in Greenville. And best regards to your dog, who made a good appearance here this evening.
Thank you. My wife and my kids didn't run in, so.
That's quite all right. I have the same thing here. So I'm closing the public hearing on case C92110. Thank you both very much for your participation. Our next, yep, take care. Our next case is case C92111, Sterling Real Estate, 475 North Granada. Mr. Beal, would you like to make a presentation?
Yes. This is a request by Robin Large and Carrie Sylvan of Lazarus and Sylvan on behalf of the developer Sterling Real Estate Partners to rezone a 10.37 acre property at 475 North Granada Avenue from I-1 Industrial to C2 Commercial for the adaptive reuse of 7 buildings currently used as a 279-room hotel as a multifamily residential development with 210 units and the construction of 8 new buildings, 6 of which will be 3-story and 2 which will be 2-story, with an additional 154 residential units for a total of 15 buildings and 364 residential units. An additional small building to be used as a community fitness room is proposed adjacent to the swimming pool near the center of the site. The subject site is located on the east side of Interstate 10, approximately 300 feet southwest of the St. Mary's Road and Granada Avenue intersection. With a total of 364 units, 145 studios, 150 one-bedroom, and 69 two-bedroom, the preliminary development plan proposes a density of 35 residential units per acre, with buildings at a maximum height of approximately 38 feet and an improved surface vehicle parking area with a total of 465 spaces and improved landscaping. The property has split zoning, with the eastern and southern edges of the site currently in C2 zoning and the balance of the site zoned I1, which does not allow residential uses. With an existing 38-foot high building to remain and with new building proposed at a height of 35 feet, the request for C2 zoning with the I2 zone portion is appropriate, as C2 allows a structure height of up to 40 feet and density of up to 44 residences per acre, while C1 zoning allows a maximum density of 36 units per acre. It limits building heights to 36 feet. The proposed rezoning of the height of the site from I1 to C2 is appropriate for this location, is compatible with existing surrounding land uses, and is in compliance with Plan Tucson and the El Presidio Neighborhood Plan. Subject to compliance with the attached preliminary conditions, approval of the requested C2 zoning is recommended. And also, as today's date, we have one letter of approval, and there's a letter from the El Presidio Neighborhood Association of support.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Ms. Sylvan, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Urino. Carrie Sylvan with Lazarus and Sylvan. Do you want my address?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, 5983 East Grant Road. I forget the protocols. I apologize.
Appreciate it.
We're very excited to be here tonight. We've done a lot of work. I'm going to try and keep the presentation somewhat brief, but I do want you to be aware of the extensive work, and a huge shout out and thank you to the El Presidio Neighborhood Association for working with us. I want to introduce the folks on our team. David Zeff, who you're seeing from Sterling Real Estate Partners, developer of multifamily residential. Their company both develops and manages projects. They know housing, specifically repositioning, doing adaptive reuse and repositioning in the market, and gearing towards workforce professionals and families. And they've done a lot of work in the Phoenix market. And David is a proud Wildcat graduate and is now spending some time in Tucson on this project. Also with us tonight is John McColgan of Fours Architecture and Interiors. They have extensive experience. I'm sure you've probably seen their work or met them in Tucson, in and around downtown, local company, a lot of connections to Tucson, have done a lot of great adaptive reuse work. And then of course our one and only Marcos Esparza, who is our traffic engineer and did a lot of work on this project as well. Robin Large with my office is also here, so is Jackson. And I believe Rory might have gotten off after the last hearing, but he was here. Okay, so wanna just run through really quickly the existing site and zoning in pictures. I know John Beal went through some of that, the project proposal, and then, like I said, focus on the outreach. So this is a unique 10-acre site just north of downtown. There aren't a lot of those available. It is a hotel use. Those of us who've been here a long time know it is the Ramada Inn. It's currently the City Center Hotel. As Mr. Beal indicated, there's 8 buildings on the site. One is a 4-story building, so that keys into why we need C2 zoning to allow that height. It's about 40 feet tall. Just for surroundings, to the north is a U-Haul storage. Along Granada are offices, and then the single and multifamily residential. That's all the El Presidio neighborhood to our east as well as our south. Multifamily residential, and then over to the west is I-10, the I-10 frontage, and the El Paso and Southwestern Greenway, which is on a portion of our site and then extends further north and south. The zoning is weird. It's split zoning, C2, I1. And what's even weirder is that I1 does not allow residential use. So we have to rezone it for the use. We are rezoning it to the C2. Not only does it match the rest of the site, so we can get rid of the weirdness of a split zoning, but we also need the C2 for the 40-foot to adaptively reuse that one building and be in compliance. We don't want to go through a rezoning and have a legal non-conforming use. We'd like to bring it all into conformity if we can. This slide just indicates the El Presidio neighborhood, as I said, is over to the pretty much to the east of us, and it is historic where you're seeing the light blue. So we are in the El Presidio neighborhood, but we are not in the historic district, the El Presidio Historic District. However, we've been working very close with the neighborhood association. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this slide and explain a few things, and then talk about the outreach, and then I can take any questions. As Mr. Beal indicated, it's an adaptive reuse of most of the buildings. And I can go back to the aerial if you want me to, but in this area with buildings M, N, and O, that actually currently is a single building that is the check-in reception area. There's a big kitchen, there's a bar, and there's some convention center space. So that is the one building that we are not retaining. We're splitting it into the three buildings, M, N, and O. However, buildings A through G are the ones that we are adaptively reusing. G is the 4-story, 40-foot building in that area. I got on a roll and lost track of my outline. Hang on just a second. We're converting, and I know this is in the staff report, it's 279 hotel rooms to 364 multifamily. Most of the adaptive reuse buildings are going to be 1-bedroom and studios. That's just the way the hotel configures and makes it easier. H, I, J, M, N, and O are probably going to be 2-bedroom units. And again, the neighborhood wanted to make sure this was geared towards young professionals, and families. And so those 2-bedroom units are geared towards that. K and L will be 1-bedroom, and I'll explain that in just a minute. The use is targeted to workforce housing. It's not the newer, expensive stuff that's being built in downtown, and that's one of the benefits of adaptive reuse on projects. The neighborhood was concerned about student housing. So on our preliminary development plan, it's very clear that it's multifamily and it will not be group dwelling. So we put that statement on the preliminary development plan. Heights, as I mentioned, the building G, the existing heights obviously will remain through A through G, including the 40-foot on G. On the new buildings, H, I, and J, M, N, and O are proposed to be 3 stories under the 40 feet. We were proposing K and L as 3 stories. The neighborhood asked us to lower those to 2 stories, so we have. I do want to point out too that H, I, and J, as well as K and L, are going to have ground floor garages that they can pull into. That's the current plan. It hasn't been entirely designed, but chances are the parking's going to be there. And then the 3-story encompasses the parking. So one of the concerns that they had was we weren't talking about 3 stories on top of parking. It is a total of 3 stories if in fact there's parking down there. When we lowered K and L, they are more likely going to be 1-bedroom. So there'll be the pull-in and then the ability to walk up to a 1-bedroom. The others are the ability to walk up to a 2-bedroom project. Access is a huge issue, and I'm happy to flip back to the aerial if there are questions. So we are retaining the Granada access, which is what is currently there, and we have committed. We initially wanted to open up the Franklin access, and the neighborhood made it clear that that was not acceptable. So we're maintaining the Franklin access as the emergency access only. It may have gated pedestrian and bike access, but no vehicular access. And then we really worked hard, and I really want to give a huge thank you to the Department of Transportation and Mobility, and particularly the director of DTM, for being in these meetings with us. When she first moved to Tucson, she actually lived in one of the apartments to the south. So when we told her about this project, she said, I have a vested interest in protecting that neighborhood. So we worked really hard on the access. What you're seeing to the north, and over on the west side, it's the I-10 frontage access, is actually City of Tucson right-of-way. It doesn't exist all the way through because there's some non-paved areas. We are working with the city to create that as a connection all the way up to St. Mary's. And then you'll see those 2 access points that we're permitted now to have out to that City of Tucson unnamed right-of-way. Maybe we'll have a competition to name it. But that will allow people to use the I-10 frontage to both get in and out. And then St. Mary's will be a right-in, right-out. There's a median in there, and it's all in the traffic report, and Marcos can explain this better than I can. But what that does is it distributes the traffic a lot more efficiently from the site. The concern from the neighborhood was an increase in intensity of use and putting that all on Granada. And as the director of DTM also pointed out, right now there's a lot of traffic, and a lot of that is because of the downtown links and people are cutting through. And the hope and the goal of the whole downtown links project is going to be to have there be a new traffic pattern and have it come out of the neighborhood and people using the downtown links. So again, really helpful to have DTM in all these meetings and explain all that so that we could solve this this way. We're also committed, for obvious reasons, to make sure that there's pedestrian and bicycle connectivity to the El Paso and Southwestern Greenway. It's an asset to the project, and it'll be really great, especially when it's completely constructed. I want to talk about amenities for just a minute, because one of the concerns, or one of the solutions to the answer of is this going to be student housing, which it's not, is the amenities package. It is not geared towards students. I mean, we'll have a pool, we'll have community room and fitness, but we're looking at playground and dog park and family barbecue areas. So you'll see the condition that was added that we worked with El Presidio on making sure those are amenity packages that are phased appropriately, because we're probably doing the adaptive reuse first and then the new buildings second. So we want to phase them appropriately and make sure they're the right amenity spaces. The last thing I want to highlight is the vegetation and the green space. If you've been out to this site, you know that it is there are no trees in the parking lot. There's a few palm trees, which I think, not as a landscape architect, but I can safely say are not native vegetation in southern Arizona. So there's a real opportunity here we're going to be bringing the site up to code for parking. And that means we're adding at least 118 trees to this site, which is huge and helpful. We agreed with the neighborhood as well on the size of those, the number of 15-gallon and then 24-inch box trees to put some mature stuff in there sooner rather than later. And then we'll be probably enhancing, as you can see on this plan, some of the amenity spaces as well. So a lot more green, a lot more trees. So I think it's going to be a real improvement. We can come back to that slide if we need to. I want to talk about the neighborhood outreach. So before we sent the notices out for the neighborhood meeting, which was scheduled for May 11th, we outreached to the leadership of the neighborhood. And what became clear was that they had their monthly meeting on May 10th, and their leadership wanted to meet with us ahead as well. So we actually met with El Presidio neighborhood once with a couple of the elected leaders, and then with the association twice before our official neighborhood meeting. And it was a good meeting, talked about all of these issues that they brought up, started to make the list and figure out how we were gonna solve for them. We had our neighborhood meeting May 11th. That summary is in your packet, so I'm not going to go through that. We continued to meet with El Presidio through the summer, and again, I know Doug Richards is here and is going to be speaking. Peggy Wilder and Bob Freitas. They were a subcommittee that was created to work with us through the summer. Even though they don't meet during the summer, they held a couple of special meetings. So really kudos and appreciate. It's always nice working with a group of people when we're trying to solve problems and issues, as opposed to just bringing out more and more of them. And it was a really productive conversation. We met 4 times, twice with the subcommittee, numerous emails and phone calls and discussions in between to come up with these conditions. The last thing that I want to point out on the engagement is I did get a phone call from one of the law firms along Granada. They actually had their protest letter ready to send in and were just giving me a professional courtesy heads up. And I said, can you hang on a second? Can I have some time to chat and update you? And forwarded them a lot of materials. They read through them and let me know that they really appreciated our work with the El Presidio neighborhood. They didn't know that we had done that, and they did not turn in the protest. Really appreciate, again, all that outreach and communication. It pays off. I already said I want to give kudos to Diana Alarcon at DTM as well. These are the conditions. I already went through these on the plan, so I'm not going to go through them again. They were traffic, amenity, space, height. The neighborhood association did want us to highlight where we were proposing parking on the garages on the first floor so that it was clear that our height included those. So we did that on the development package. I'm sorry, the PDP, the preliminary development plan. There were two other things that they asked for related to property management. And one of the things that we discovered, we did this on a couple of other cases. Yes. Oh, for the love of Pete, you're not seeing my slides.
Not to worry. I am very familiar with the property. I have been, prior to this rezoning case, I had occasion to look at the property, walk the property. I know all the buildings you mentioned by letter, at least the ones that are existing ones that you're going to propose to adaptively reuse, and not to worry.
That is awesome. I can honestly say in 24 years of doing this, I don't think I've ever done that. So thank you for acknowledging, Mr. Urino, that you know. The last slide, which I'm not going to share, is what I'm on now, and it says questions. So we respectfully request a recommendation to approve. I can answer questions, and I can go back to any of the slides that you actually did not see. If you want me to.
And I don't want the name of the person who reminded you that the slides were not turned on. You'll have to deal with that. So, Mr. Zeff, welcome. I know that you have worked very hard with Ms. Sylvan and her team and the associated professionals from other teams on this, and welcome to Tucson.
Thank you very much. It really has been a pleasure working with everybody. It's really been great because it hasn't been adversarial at all with people, the city staff and El Presidio. It's really been a real collaborative effort for us to hear their concerns, get traffic involved. Donna made herself readily available, and Marcos heard everything that everybody was talking about and the concerns. And it's really been, of all the projects I've done that have involved communities, it's really been it's been a pleasure, but it's also been the most smooth process in working together with everybody.
I'm glad to hear that, and that reflects well on the applicant as well as the applicant's representatives. I know we had a request from Mr. Richards to speak. Mr. Richards, would you like to go ahead by starting with your name and address for the record?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Urino. My name is Doug Richards. I live at 425 West Paseo Redondo, Redondo Tower Apartments. I've been a resident here for 17 years. I'm also co-vice president of the El Presidio Neighborhood Association, also known as the EPNA. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of El Presidio Neighborhood Association. EPNA has worked closely and very effectively with the developer, Mr. Zeff, and his consultant team led by Carrie Sylvan since May. We appreciate Ms. Sylvan's professional and cooperative manner. We also highly appreciate the engagement of Department of Transportation and Mobility Director Diana Alarcon.
Yep.
And helping resolve the key traffic as part of the priorities for the Neighborhood Association. EPNA's major concern is and has always been to preserve the historic and residential character of El Presidio neighborhood. We believe that the proposed redevelopment of the Hotel City Center property at 475 North Granada Avenue is appropriate to our overall residential development. We would have preferred the proposed development to include at least some owner-occupied units with lower density overall. in order to attract new neighbors that would be interested in long-term residency. However, although the developer Sterling Real Estate did not ultimately agree to include any owner-occupied units, we were able to reach agreement on most of the other major areas of initial concern to us. Most importantly, minimizing additional trips onto Granada Avenue due to two ingress-egress driveways on the north and northwest ends of the property that will draw traffic from the apartment complex, either west onto the I-10 frontage or north and east onto St. Mary's Road. Although Granada ingress-egress will still be open, trips generated by the 364 apartment units will be distributed largely to the other entrance-exit drives. Additionally, it is critical that there be emergency access only onto Franklin Street. A key EPNA goal is to reduce cut-through traffic on Franklin through El Presidio neighborhood, particularly during this construction of downtown links. The developer agreed to our request to limit the maximum height of the two buildings closest to Granada, which I believe, Carrie, it was a K&L, I believe.
Yeah.
And yes, thank you. To the historic district boundaries to 2 stories. So the developer agreed to include several family-friendly amenity properties such as playground, barbecue area, and the planting of larger, more mature trees to minimize the urban heat island impacts, and to include some noise at nighttime for owner-sponsored events. Units are included in our letter that was sent by our neighborhood president, including the expectation of continued engagement of the developer with EPNA during design and build-up of the project and beyond. Based on the appropriateness of residential development on this site and our successful negotiation with Mr. Zeff and his consultant team, EPNA Council had a special meeting on August 2nd, 2021, and voted unanimously to support the rezoning request with the specified written conditions. Our detailed letter of support is in the record for tonight's hearing, and I thank you for allowing me to speak again.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to speak. Your participation both in your neighborhood association and in meetings like this is very important to the process, so thank you. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case? Hearing no one, unless Mr. Zeff or Ms. Sylvan has anything further to say? No? I'll close the public hearing on case C92111, and I want to thank everyone for their participation and hope you all have a safe and lovely evening. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.